Alina had never imagined that life on the small mining colony of Varelia could be exciting or important. The colony was located on the edge of human-occupied space, far from the bustling core worlds where commerce and politics thrived. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, with jagged mountains of iron ore, endless dust storms, and cold, thin air that made every movement a struggle. Humans who lived there were tough and resilient, hardened by the difficulties of survival, but they had long accepted that their world would never be more than a small, forgotten speck in the galaxy. The Carvens, the dominant alien coalition, ruled the nearby systems with strict control, and any attempt at rebellion had long since been crushed. People had learned that staying quiet and following orders was the only way to live without drawing deadly attention. Alina, however, had always been curious. From a young age, she had been fascinated by machines, computers, and the mysterious technologies that the Carvens left behind when they passed through human-controlled systems. Unlike most people on the colony, she did not accept the status quo. She dreamed of something bigger, though she rarely shared those dreams. Her life consisted of long days fixing mining equipment, maintaining communication relays, and studying any piece of technology she could get her hands on. She was clever and observant, and she noticed patterns that others ignored. While most colonists complained about the monotony of life under Carven oversight, Alina found the routines comforting, because they gave her the time and freedom to think, to experiment, and to plan. One day, while repairing an old supply transport drone in a remote storage hangar, Alina stumbled upon a hidden compartment in the machinery. Inside, she found a small, glowing device, unlike anything she had ever seen. Its surface was smooth and metallic, etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer when touched. It pulsed faintly with light, almost as if it were alive. At first, she assumed it was simply advanced Carven technology, left behind by mistake or discarded. But when she examined it more closely, she realized it was far more sophisticated than anything humans had developed. It appeared to enhance cognitive abilities, processing information in ways she could barely comprehend. Her heart raced as she realized the potential. If this device could be understood and replicated, humans could gain an advantage that might allow them to resist the Carvens for the first time in generations. Alina worked secretly for weeks, experimenting with the device late into the night when the colony was quiet. She had to be careful. The Carvens had sensors everywhere, and even the slightest unauthorized activity could attract attention. She began to notice changes in herself. Her mind felt sharper, faster, and more alert. Patterns that once took her hours to understand now became clear within minutes. She realized that with proper training and focus, this device could be a tool to amplify human intelligence and strategy. She could predict problems, find solutions, and plan operations with a precision that even the Carvens would find difficult to anticipate. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of hope. Humans did not have to remain weak and oppressed. They could fight back, and maybe, just maybe, they could change the course of history. Despite her excitement, Alina knew she could not act alone. The colony itself was too small, and most people were too fearful to take risks. If word got out, the Carvens would crush any attempt at resistance before it began. So she began to observe the people around her, carefully considering who could be trusted. She remembered Captain Roland, the colony's security officer, who had quietly protected colonists from Carven patrols when they overstepped their authority. There was also Mara, a technician who had once sabotaged Carven mining equipment to save human workers from accidents. And then there were the miners themselves, hardworking and skilled, but mostly unaware of the larger galaxy beyond their world. Each person had strengths and weaknesses, and Alina realized that if humanity was to take its first real step toward rebellion, she would need to bring together the right group of people who were brave, intelligent, and loyal. Alina's first attempts to contact allies were cautious. She used encrypted communication channels and coded messages, testing the reactions of her contacts before revealing the full truth. The Carvens monitored everything, but the network she built was subtle, almost invisible. Slowly, she began to find others who shared her vision. At first it was only a handful, skeptical and fearful of the consequences. They questioned her motives and the safety of the plan. Could humans really fight back against an empire that spanned entire star systems? Could one small colony make any difference at all? Alina patiently explained her discoveries, demonstrating the device's potential and emphasizing that careful planning and strategy could turn even the smallest human force into a formidable opponent. Over time, doubt gave way to curiosity, and curiosity slowly became determination. The first test of their cooperation came unexpectedly. A routine inspection by the Carvens revealed irregularities in the colony's power grid. Alina and her team realized that this was a chance to test their abilities in a controlled environment. Using clever tactics and quick thinking, they redirected the inspection team's sensors and created false readings, making it appear as though everything was normal. The Carvens were confused and frustrated, but they could not pinpoint the cause. For Alina and her group, this small success was monumental. It proved that humans, using intelligence, creativity, and subtle coordination, could outsmart the alien Cyben if only for a short time. The taste of victory, however minor, was intoxicating. It sparked a fire in their hearts, a belief that perhaps the galaxy could be challenged after all. News of small human victories, even if largely contained within whispers on Veralia, began to spread. The colony buzzed with a new kind of energy, a mix of fear and excitement. People began talking in hushed tones about the possibility of resistance, about the potential for humans to rise above their oppression. The Carvans, unaware of the growing network and the device's capabilities, remained confident that humanity could never pose a serious threat. They patrolled the skies with their fleets, enforced strict rules on communication, and punished dissent severely. But Alina understood something that the Carvans did not. Fear could be used, but hope could be more powerful. Once humans realized they could fight back, the momentum would grow faster than any alien intelligence could contain. Alina spent countless nights in the dim light of the colony's hangars, planning, testing, and refining strategies. She trained her small team in problem-solving, tactical thinking, and improvisation. Every scenario was explored, every potential threat considered. She knew that their survival depended not on brute force, but on cleverness, unity, and the element of surprise. She also realized that the Carvans' overconfidence was their greatest weakness. They assumed humans were weak, unimaginative, and easy to control. That assumption would become the humans' most valuable advantage. As weeks turned into months, Elena's secret project grew into something much larger than she had anticipated. What had begun as a personal experiment with a mysterious device was now the foundation of a budding resistance movement. People began to see her not just as a brilliant engineer, but as a leader, someone who could inspire courage and hope in a galaxy that had long forgotten it. And while the Carvans remained a looming threat, unaware of the storm building quietly in the shadows, humanity began to realize something extraordinary, even on a small, forgotten colony. The first sparks of defiance could ignite a fire capable of shaking the entire galaxy. The first part of this story is not about battles or explosions. It is about discovery, courage, and the quiet determination to stand against impossible odds. It is about a young woman who dared to imagine a world where humans were not powerless, who saw opportunity where others saw despair, and who quietly began to change the fate of her people. The galaxy was still calm, the Carvans still in control, but beneath the surface, something new had begun. Humanity's spark had been lit, and the tremors it would send through the stars were only just beginning. After the initial spark of defiance on Veralia, Alina knew that small victories alone would not be enough. The colony, though a beacon of hope, could not survive forever under the watchful eyes of the Carvans. Their control was vast, their technology superior, and their fleets far stronger than anything humans had to offer. But Alina had discovered a secret. Humans, when united and clever, could exploit weaknesses that the Carvans did not even know existed. She understood that their next steps had to be more ambitious, carefully planned and coordinated across multiple colonies. The idea of a true resistance began to take shape in her mind, a network of humans working together, using intelligence, courage, and strategy to challenge an empire that had always underestimated them. The first challenge was communication. The Carvans monitored almost every form of transmission, and any unauthorized signal could draw deadly attention. Alina devised a system of coded messages hidden within routine colony broadcasts, patterns that only trusted humans could detect. She began reaching out to other colonies, one by one, identifying those with people brave enough to resist. Some were hesitant, fearful of Carvan retaliation. Others had already been quietly rebelling in small ways, and they eagerly joined the network. Slowly, a web of human allies began to form, connecting isolated pockets of hope across vast distances of space. Each connection was risky, but the promise of shared strength outweighed the danger. Elena's team on Veralia started organizing small, precise operations to test their capabilities and build confidence. They intercepted supply shipments meant for Carvan overseers, rerouting essential resources to struggling colonies. They sabotaged mining equipment used to exploit human workers, ensuring that the aliens' control would be challenged without drawing immediate suspicion. Every successful operation boosted morale, not just among Elena's team, but across the network. Humans began to see that resistance was possible, that they could strike at their oppressors and remain free. It was the beginning of a cultural shift, from fear and submission to courage and determination. The Carvans, meanwhile, remained unaware of the growing network. They noticed small anomalies and missed deadlines, minor errors in shipments, unexplained system malfunctions, but they dismissed them as insignificant. Their arrogance made them blind to the patterns emerging beneath their notice. They assumed that humans were incapable of strategy beyond basic survival, that they were predictable and limited. This misjudgment became humanity's greatest advantage. Alina studied the aliens' behavior carefully, understanding their routines, predicting their moves, and using their overconfidence against them. The more the Carvans ignored the signs, the stronger the human resistance became. As the network grew, Alina realized that information would be their most powerful weapon. Knowledge of Carvan patrols, supply lines, and communication protocols allowed humans to operate in shadows, striking where and when the aliens least expected. A minor disruption on one colony could ripple across the galaxy. creating confusion and uncertainty within the Carven command. Elena's team developed techniques to remain undetected. Using stealth technology scavenged from old ships and clever misdirection, humans learned to anticipate Carven responses, turning potential dangers into opportunities. The resistance was no longer just about survival. It was about demonstrating that humans could outthink a superior enemy. Recruiting and training new members became a crucial part of the effort. Elena personally oversaw the development of strategic thinking and problem-solving among her recruits. They practiced simulations, tested their responses to unexpected situations, and learned to trust one another implicitly. Humans, she realized, had a natural adaptability that the Carvens lacked. While the aliens relied on rigid hierarchies and strict orders, humans could improvise, adapt, and innovate. Every new member who joined the network added not just numbers, but creativity and unique perspective, strengthening the movement in ways that technology alone could not. It was a lesson that would prove invaluable as the resistance faced greater challenges. One of the first coordinated actions beyond Veralia was the interception of a Carven supply convoy heading to a nearby colony. Elena's team studied the convoy's route, timing, and security measures in detail. They calculated every variable, accounting for potential mistakes and the unknown factors that could arise. When the moment arrived, small strike teams, operating independently but with perfect coordination, disabled the convoy's engines, rerouted cargo, and disappeared before the Carvens could respond. The operation was a resounding success. Humans celebrated quietly, aware that the Carvens could retaliate at any moment, but proud that they had accomplished what had once seemed impossible. Word of the strike spread across the network, inspiring others to act and reinforcing the belief that resistance was not only possible, but effective. That as these successes accumulated, the culture of the colonies began to change. Fear still existed. Of course, no one forgot the consequences of defying the Carvens, but it was balanced by a growing sense of pride and purpose. Humans who had once accepted subjugation began to take initiative, to protect one another, and to share resources and knowledge in ways that had been unthinkable before. Elena's vision of a united resistance began to materialize. The colonies were no longer isolated, weak, and passive. They were becoming a coordinated force, capable of challenging the Carvens in ways that were unpredictable and dangerous for the Empire. The Carvens, increasingly frustrated by the anomalies, began to tighten their surveillance and send additional patrols. They assumed that this sudden disruption was the work of a few isolated troublemakers, unaware that a sophisticated network was operating across multiple colonies. Each new patrol, each additional measure meant to contain humanity, was countered with ingenuity. Humans created false signals, used decoys, and exploited Carven assumptions to continue their operations undetected. Elena's network was growing in both size and skill, learning from each encounter and becoming more confident in its ability to challenge the alien authority. The psychological shift was profound. Humans were no longer reacting out of fear. They were acting with purpose, strategy, and belief in their cause. Amid this expansion, Elena faced her greatest challenge, yet maintaining secrecy while expanding influence. Each new connection increased the risk of exposure, yet limiting growth would also limit the resistance's power. She devised a method of compartmentalization, ensuring that only trusted members knew critical details. Each colony acted as a semi-independent unit, capable of contributing to the network without revealing the full picture. This approach minimized risk while maximizing impact. Elena's leadership became a model of balance between caution and ambition. She inspired confidence in her allies, ensuring that fear never outweighed hope, and that every individual understood the importance of their role in the greater effort. The Resistance's growing reputation began to attract attention beyond human colonies. Other oppressed species, long subjugated by the Carvens, took notice of humanity's daring actions. Some quietly offered support, sharing intelligence, providing supplies, or assisting in small tactical operations. Elena welcomed this assistance, carefully integrating it into the network without drawing unnecessary attention. It was the beginning of a broader coalition, one that could eventually challenge the Carvens on multiple fronts. Humanity, once considered weak and insignificant, was starting to earn respect across the galaxy, not just through fear, but through intelligence, courage, and tenacity. Despite these successes, danger was never far away. The Carvens remained a powerful and ruthless force, capable of devastating retaliation. Every decision carried weight, every action risked discovery. Elena and her team operated under constant pressure, balancing innovation with caution. Yet the fear of failure was overshadowed by the belief that inaction was far more dangerous. Humanity had discovered a spark of possibility, and every small victory fueled a determination to grow stronger, to act boldly, and to resist oppression wherever it could be challenged. The resistance was no longer an idea. It was a living, breathing force, growing quietly, but inevitably, toward a moment of reckoning with the galaxy's dominant power. Humans had transformed from passive survivors to cunning strategists. The network's operations, while modest compared to the full might of the Carvens, demonstrated that humans could act with intelligence, foresight, and unity. Every minor strike, every clever maneuver, and every successful act of defiance reinforced a single truth. Humanity, underestimated for so long, had the potential to challenge even the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The colonies, once isolated and fearful, had begun to feel the thrill of possibility. The galaxy, though still unaware, was starting to tremble not because of the humans' weapons, but because of their courage, their creativity, and their refusal to remain powerless. As the human resistance grew stronger, Alina realized that small victories were no longer enough. Their actions on individual colonies had disrupted Carvan operations. But if humanity wanted to truly challenge the alien empire, they needed to operate on a larger scale. The situation had evolved into a game of strategy, one that spanned multiple star systems and required precise coordination. Alina began to see the galaxy as a giant chessboard, each colony a piece that could be moved, protected, or sacrificed to achieve a larger goal. Her mind raced with possibilities, each scenario more complex than the last, but also more promising. She understood that the key to survival and eventual victory was not brute force, which humans lacked, but cleverness, coordination, and the ability to predict and manipulate Carvan behavior. The first step was to consolidate the network. Human colonies that had previously acted independently began sharing information, intelligence, and resources. Alina established secure communication lines that were almost impossible for the Carvans to detect. Messages were hidden in mundane transmissions, embedded within routine data streams, and coded in ways that only trained humans could understand. Each colony operated semi-independently, able to make quick decisions, but also connected to the broader strategy. This network allowed the resistance to respond rapidly to Carvan movements and take advantage of opportunities as they arose. It was the first time in centuries that humans could act with such coordination across vast distances of space. Alina also realized that intelligence alone was not enough. Humans had to exploit the weaknesses of the Carvans themselves. The aliens were powerful, but they were also rigid, arrogant, and bureaucratic. They trusted their technology and assumed that no human could match their strategic planning. Alina and her team began studying Carvan patterns, looking for flaws in their command structure, gaps in patrols, and rivalries within the alien hierarchy. They discovered that the Carvan Council, while united in appearance, had factions with competing interests. By subtly manipulating these rivalries through misinformation, intercepted communications, and staged incidents, humans could create confusion and distrust among the aliens. It was a dangerous game, but one that promised enormous rewards. The ability to influence the decisions of a species that ruled much of the galaxy gave humanity a chance to turn the tide in their favor. As the Resistance's intelligence network expanded, so did their operations. Human strike teams began targeting critical Carvan installations, not with brute force, but with cunning precision. Supply lines were sabotaged, communication hubs disabled, and key officers misled or neutralized. Each operation was designed not only to disrupt but also to send a message. Humans were no longer passive subjects, and they were capable of outthinking an empire. Alina coordinated these actions with meticulous planning. Every detail mattered: the timing of attacks, the placement of decoys, and the anticipation of Carvan responses. Humans relied on creativity and unpredictability, qualities that the rigid Carvans could not easily counter. With each successful operation, the resistance grew bolder, more confident, and more capable of taking on larger challenges. One of the most remarkable aspects of this phase was the way humans leveraged their adaptability. Carvans were powerful, but they were not flexible. Their strategies relied on predictable responses and strict adherence to orders. Humans, by contrast, could improvise on the fly. When a plan went slightly wrong, they could adjust instantly, using unexpected solutions to turn setbacks into victories. Alina's teams trained extensively in simulations and contingency planning, ensuring that no situation caught them unprepared. They learned to anticipate Carvan reactions, to predict where resources would be sent, and to exploit every vulnerability. The humans' ability to think creatively and act decisively became their most valuable asset, allowing them to punch far above their weight in conflicts that would have been impossible for conventional forces. The growing human network also began to attract attention from other oppressed species. Throughout the galaxy, various alien worlds lived under Carvan domination, fearful of rebellion and suppression. When these species observed humanity's successes, they began to see a possibility for change. Some offered covert assistance, intelligence about Carvan movements, safe routes for human operatives, and even limited military support in isolated strikes. Alina welcomed this help carefully, integrating it into the network without compromising security. These alliances were small at first, but they marked the beginning of a broader coalition, one that had the potential to challenge Carvan dominance on multiple fronts. Humans were no longer fighting alone. Their actions were inspiring hope across the galaxy. A turning point in this phase came when Alina and her team successfully manipulated a Carvan faction against another. Through a series of intercepted communications and carefully staged incidents, they created mistrust between rival leaders of the Carvan Council. One faction believed the other was secretly undermining operations, leading to internal disputes, delays in decision-making, and even the reassignment of resources away from critical areas. This internal chaos allowed humans to strike with precision, hitting lightly defended systems and gaining advantages without engaging in direct combat. The Carvens were strong, but their arrogance and inability to anticipate unconventional strategies left them vulnerable. Humans were exploiting every weakness, turning the aliens' own structure into a liability. During this time, Alina herself became more than a leader. She became a symbol of ingenuity, hope, and strategic brilliance. Colonists, engineers, and operatives looked to her for guidance, inspired by her courage and vision. She organized training programs, not only for combat skills, but also for strategic thinking, teaching her followers to analyze situations, predict enemy behavior, and make decisions independently. Each new operative added not just manpower but creative problem-solving, intelligence, and adaptability. Humans were no longer isolated workers or survivors. They were thinkers, planners, and innovators, capable of outmaneuvering an empire that had always dismissed them as weak. The Resistance's actions also had a psychological effect on the Carvens. Reports of failed patrols, sabotaged supply lines, and mysterious human strikes began to spread. While the aliens were still confident in their overall control, uncertainty crept into their ranks. They could not easily predict human actions, and this unpredictability forced them to overextend, divert resources unnecessarily, and second-guess decisions. The Carvens' arrogance, once a source of strength, now became a weakness. Humans were turning fear and uncertainty into an advantage, demonstrating that strategy, intelligence, and courage could outweigh superior firepower. Elena's team also focused on building resilience within the human network. Each colony operated semi-independently, capable of defending itself and conducting operations even if isolated. Knowledge, skills, and resources were shared, ensuring that no single point of failure could destroy the network. This decentralization made the Resistance more robust and adaptable, allowing humans to continue their efforts despite setbacks or losses. The emphasis on preparation, training, and coordination transformed ordinary colonists into capable operatives, each playing a crucial role in the broader strategy. Humanity was no longer just surviving, it was becoming a calculated, intelligent force that could challenge the Carvens in ways they had never imagined. Humanity had moved from simple survival to sophisticated strategy. Small colonies had become nodes in a vast network of intelligence, operations, and support. The Resistance had demonstrated that even a species once considered weak could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast a more powerful adversary. Elena's vision of a united human front was becoming reality, not through brute force, but through cleverness, coordination, and adaptability. The Carvens, despite their technological superiority, were beginning to realize that humans were no longer predictable or powerless. The galaxy, once calm under alien control, was beginning to tremble not because of large-scale battles, but because a spark of defiance, nurtured through intelligence and strategy, was spreading across the stars. This phase was crucial in showing that humans could achieve far more than anyone, including themselves, had believed possible. Small strikes, intelligence operations, and strategic manipulation of the Carvens created a sense of momentum that was difficult to stop. Humans learned to value their creativity, adaptability, and cooperation as weapons as powerful as any ship or weapon system. The network's success proved that the Resistance was not a fleeting rebellion but a carefully cultivated movement capable of challenging an empire across multiple systems. Elena's leadership, intelligence, and vision had transformed scattered colonies into a cohesive, strategic force. The galaxy was no longer a place of passive human suffering. It had become a chessboard where humanity, once underestimated, was beginning to play its first decisive moves. As humanity's resistance grew stronger, the Carvens could no longer ignore the small disruptions and mysterious attacks that had been plaguing their systems for months. The once confident alien empire, which had viewed humans as weak and insignificant, was beginning to realize that a serious threat was emerging. That Carvens responded by sending one of their largest fleets ever assembled, a massive armada designed to crush the human colonies and eliminate the Resistance once and for all. The humans, though brave and intelligent, were heavily outnumbered and outgunned. Ships built for mining and transport were now expected to face warships bristling with weapons, shields, and advanced technology. At first glance, the odds seemed impossible, but Alina, now fully aware of her responsibility as a leader, saw this not as a point of despair, but as an opportunity, a moment where careful planning and courage could turn the tide. Alina knew that humanity could not match the Carvens in a conventional battle. They lacked the firepower, the fleet size, and the direct military experience. What they did have, however, were two powerful advantages: intelligence and unpredictability. The humans had spent months studying Carven tactics, patterns, and behavior. They knew how the aliens thought, how they expected humans to react, and where they were vulnerable. Alina devised a plan that leveraged these strengths, a simultaneous multi-front operation designed to confuse, divide, and outmaneuver the alien fleet. It would require perfect coordination, timing, and trust among all human operatives. Any mistake could be catastrophic, but with careful planning, it could also lead to humanity's first major victory against the Empire. The first phase of the plan involved diversion. While one group of human ships and small strike teams created chaos in a sector far from the main fleet, they transmitted false signals, mimicking larger fleets in exaggerated numbers. They staged fake attacks on supply lines and carbon installations, drawing enemy forces away from the real targets. The Carvans, expecting humans to act predictably, fell for the ruse almost entirely. Their attention and resources were split, and their command struggled to react to what appeared to be multiple crises occurring simultaneously. Elena's strategy relied on deception, creating confusion among the enemy while conserving human resources. Every false strike, every feint, was carefully calculated to set the stage for the decisive phase of the operation. While the Carvans focused on diversions, other human teams moved with precision toward critical targets. Using advanced stealth technology scavenged and adapted from Carvan designs, the humans navigated through enemy patrols undetected. Their objective was to strike key infrastructure, communication hubs, supply depots, and weapons platforms. By disabling these critical points, the human forces could disrupt the Carvans' coordination and reduce their ability to respond effectively. Each operation was planned down to the smallest detail. Elena had ensured that contingencies were in place for every potential problem. From sensor detection to sudden enemy reinforcements, the human operatives relied on ingenuity, teamwork, and split-second decision skills that the rigid, disciplined Carvans often lacked. One of the most daring operations involved disabling a Carvan command relay that controlled multiple patrol fleets in a sector. A small team, led by Mara, navigated an asteroid field to approach the relay undetected. They used makeshift tools, adapted human technology, and sheer courage to infiltrate and sabotage the facility. Every movement was tense. Any error would trigger alarms and invite immediate retaliation. The team worked in perfect coordination, exploiting weaknesses in the alien technology that the Carvans assumed were impossible to breach. When the relay finally went offline, the effect was immediate. Multiple Carvan fleets lost communication, patrols became disorganized, and command decisions were delayed. It was a small action with an enormous impact, demonstrating that intelligence, preparation, and boldness could achieve results far beyond what sheer force could accomplish. Meanwhile, Elena herself coordinated operations from the command hub on view. She monitored every signal, adapted plans in real time, and made crucial decisions that balanced risk with reward. The pressure was immense. Failure could mean the destruction of the human network and countless lives lost. But Elena's confidence in her team and her strategy never wavered. She trusted their skills, their courage, and their ability to improvise. The humans' adaptability and creativity became their greatest strength. In situations where rigid rules would fail, humans were able to respond dynamically, exploiting opportunities and mitigating threats in ways the Carvans could not anticipate. The alien empire, for all its power, was vulnerable precisely because it underestimated the ingenuity of its prey. As the battle escalated, humans conducted simultaneous strikes across multiple fronts. While the diversions drew enemy attention away, human teams sabotaged supply lines, disabled weapons platforms, and even freed colonists who had been captured. Each operation was like a carefully placed move on a chessboard, designed to force the Carvans into positions of weakness. The aliens, frustrated and confused, struggled to respond effectively. Their rigid hierarchy slowed decision-making, and their reliance on predictable strategies made them vulnerable to unconventional tactics. Humanity, though smaller and less powerful, was able to exploit every flaw in the Carvan system, demonstrating that intelligence and creativity could outweigh raw strength in warfare. The psychological impact on the Carvans was profound. For the first time, they realized that humans were capable of organized, strategic resistance. They had assumed humans would remain reactive and fearful, but instead, they were proactive, calculating, and unpredictable. Reports of human successes, though initially dismissed as minor incidents, began to accumulate and create uncertainty within the Carvan command. Trust within the alien ranks eroded slightly, and hesitation crept into their decisions. Even the most confident Carvan officers began to doubt their assumptions, unsure of where humans might strike next or how many were involved. This uncertainty further amplified the effectiveness of human operations. As the Carvans became reactive instead of decisive, the humans' coordination also allowed them to minimize casualties while maximizing impact. Instead of engaging in direct destructive battles they could not win, they relied on precision strikes, subterfuge, and careful planning. Human operatives moved in small, highly trained teams, executing missions that created disruption far greater than their numbers would suggest. Every success strengthened morale, not just on Varelia but across the network. Colonists who had once feared Carvan retaliation now saw that resistance could succeed, inspiring even more individuals to contribute. The psychological effect of these victories was immense. Hope, once scarce, began to spread across human systems like wildfire. One of the most critical elements of this phase was the humans' ability to adapt in real time. when the Carvens responded with countermeasures. Human teams quickly adjusted plans, used unexpected routes, and exploited overlooked vulnerabilities. Each setback was treated as a learning opportunity, and every operation improved the resistance's overall effectiveness. This adaptability, combined with ingenuity and coordination, allowed humans to achieve victories that seemed impossible on paper. The Carvens, for all their superior firepower, could not predict every move, and their mistakes were amplified by human strategic foresight. It was a lesson that no empire, no matter how powerful, could ignore. Intelligence and creativity could rival brute force, and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The human resistance had demonstrated its ability to operate on a galactic scale. Small colonies and isolated teams had become part of a coordinated network capable of striking the Carvens simultaneously across multiple systems. Each operation, though individually modest, combined to create chaos and confusion for the alien empire. Elena's vision of a multi-front, intelligent resistance had come to life. Humans, once considered weak and disorganized, had become a force capable of challenging the Carvens' dominance. The galaxy was beginning to notice a shift. Humanity was no longer passive, no longer predictable, and no longer powerless. Every success, every clever strike, and every act of courage sent a clear message. When humanity takes matters into its own hands, it can change the balance of power in ways no one expects. This phase was crucial in proving that humans could achieve victories far beyond what their small numbers might suggest. By using intelligence, strategy, deception, and coordination, they had transformed from a scattered, fearful population into a tactical force capable of challenging a vast empire. The Carvens, despite their superior technology and numbers, were now facing an opponent that could think, adapt, and innovate in ways they could not fully control. Humanity had learned the power of precision, adaptability, and unity, and these lessons would set the stage for even greater challenges in the battles to come. The galaxy, once calm under alien rule, now trembled at the prospect of a species rising against impossible odds, proving that courage, strategy, and determination could defy even the mightiest of empires. The final phase of humanity's rise against the Carvens began with tension so thick it felt like the air itself had changed. Across multiple star systems, every human colony, every strike team, every operative prepared for the decisive confrontation that would determine their fate. The Carvens, now fully aware of humanity's intelligence, ingenuity, and unpredictability, were furious and determined to crush the resistance once and for all. Their fleets had been reinforced, their warships upgraded, and their strategies carefully planned to eliminate any chance of human success. They believed that a single, overwhelming strike would end the rebellion. But Elena, who had spent years studying their behavior, predicting their moves, and training her teams, knew that victory would require more than courage. It would require a level of strategy, coordination, and audacity that the Carvens could never anticipate. Elena's plan for the final confrontation was unprecedented. It was not about facing the Carvens head-on in a single overwhelming battle, which humans could never win. Instead, she designed a multi-layered operation that relied on simultaneous strikes, strategic deception, and precise timing. Human teams would attack multiple key locations at once, each acting as a part of a larger plan. While decoys and false signals drew the bulk of the enemy fleet away from the critical targets, every movement, every decision, and every action had been rehearsed, simulated, and refined. The pressure was enormous. Failure could mean the end of humanity as a free species. Yet, despite the stakes, Elena's confidence in her people and their abilities never wavered. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that humans could succeed. That as the operation began, humans demonstrated an extraordinary level of coordination and adaptability. Strike teams moved through asteroid fields, navigated through tight planetary orbits, and infiltrated heavily guarded Carven stations. Using the advanced intelligence network built over months, human operatives knew exactly where to go, what to disable, and how to avoid detection. Their movements were silent, calculated, and precise, like pieces on a chessboard moving toward a checkmate that the Carvens could not see coming. Each operation was executed flawlessly, combining stealth, sabotage, and strategic disruption in ways the aliens had never imagined. The Carvens, expecting straightforward resistance, were thrown into confusion, unable to respond effectively to the coordinated strikes unfolding across the galaxy. The psychological impact on both sides was immense. For humans, each success reinforced confidence and morale. Colonists who had once lived in fear now felt pride and purpose, seeing their sacrifices and efforts directly contributing to the downfall of an empire that had oppressed them for centuries. Elena's leadership inspired loyalty, courage, and ingenuity, encouraging every individual to give their best, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The humans' unity, creativity, and determination became more powerful than any weapon, enabling them to achieve results far beyond what their numbers or firepower would suggest. For the Carvens, the shock was profound. Their rigid assumptions about humans were shattered, and uncertainty spread through their ranks. Officers questioned orders, factions doubted one another, and hesitation replaced decisiveness. Humanity had turned fear into a weapon, exploiting the very arrogance and structure that had once made the Covenants invincible. At the heart of this phase was the decisive strike against the Covenant High Council, the core of their political and military power. Alina personally led a small but highly trained team in a daring operation to infiltrate the Council's flagship, a massive warship heavily guarded by the Empire's most elite forces. Every step was calculated. They avoided patrols, bypassed advanced security systems, and used subtle deception to remain undetected. It was a tense and dangerous mission, requiring split-second decisions, trust in each other, and an unyielding determination to succeed. For hours they moved through the ship's corridors, neutralizing threats silently and using clever tactics to avoid detection. Every action brought them closer to the heart of the Carvan Empire, the place where the final outcome would be decided. Meanwhile, coordinated strikes across other critical systems kept the Carvans occupied and off balance. Supply lines were severed, communication networks were disrupted, and key military installations were sabotaged. The aliens could not respond to every threat at once, and their forces were spread thin across multiple fronts. Humanity, using intelligence, adaptability, and precise planning, was able to maximize the impact of each small team, creating disruption that far exceeded their numbers. Every success added momentum to the operation, creating a sense of inevitability that humans would achieve victory if they remained focused, disciplined, and united. The Carvans, for all their power, were facing a force they could not fully comprehend or predict. As Alina and her team approached the council chamber, the tension reached its peak. The Carvans had anticipated an attack, but not one so bold, coordinated, or intelligent. Alina's careful study of their behavior allowed her to anticipate their countermeasures, and she adjusted the team's movements in real time. When the final confrontation occurred, it was swift, precise, and decisive. Using a combination of strategy, technology, and sheer courage, the humans neutralized the Council's leadership, effectively decapitating the Empire's command structure. The result was immediate and catastrophic for the Carvans. Confusion spread through their forces, orders were delayed or ignored, and their coordinated responses collapsed. Humanity had struck at the very core of the alien empire, demonstrating that intelligence, courage, and determination could overcome even overwhelming power. The victory did not come without cost. Many human operatives sacrificed their lives to ensure the success of the mission. Every team faced danger, and losses were inevitable. Yet the bravery and determination of these individuals ensured that humanity as a species could survive and thrive. The sacrifice of the few allowed the many to experience freedom, hope, and the chance to shape their destiny. Elena's leadership ensured that each loss was honored, each victory celebrated, and that the human network remained intact to rebuild and strengthen their position in the galaxy. It was a bittersweet moment, combining triumph with sorrow, but it solidified humanity's resolve and demonstrated their resilience in the face of adversity. As the dust settled, humans across multiple star systems realized that they had achieved something extraordinary. They were no longer a species living in fear and subjugation. Through intelligence, ingenuity, and courage, they had defeated an empire that had seemed invincible. Colonists celebrated cautiously, aware that challenges would continue, but also proud of what they had accomplished. Humanity had proven that, even against overwhelming odds, determination, strategy, and unity could achieve results that brute force alone could not. The galaxy had witnessed a species rise from obscurity to power, not through sheer strength, but through creativity, courage, and the willingness to act decisively when it mattered most. The aftermath of the final confrontation was transformative. The Carvan Empire, though weakened, had learned to respect humans as a formidable force. Other oppressed species, inspired by humanity's success, began to consider alliances and cooperation, seeing that resistance was possible and effective. Elena's vision of a united human front had not only defeated the immediate threat but also laid the foundation for a new era of influence and leadership in the galaxy. Humans had shown that they could think strategically, act boldly, and inspire others to join their cause. They were no longer merely survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and architects of their own destiny. In the end, humanity's victory was not measured only by the defeat of the Carvans, but by what it represented: the power of courage, intelligence, and determination to overcome impossible odds. Elena and her team had demonstrated that even a small, underestimated species could challenge an empire and change the course of history. The galaxy, once calm and dominated by fear, now trembled at the realization that humanity was capable of incredible feats. The spark of defiance that had begun on a small mining colony had grown into a wildfire of resistance, proving that when humans take matters into their own hands, no empire, no matter how powerful, is untouchable. Humanity had awakened, and the stars themselves would never see them in the same way again. This final phase cemented humanity's transformation from a scattered, fearful species into a coordinated, strategic, and determined force. It demonstrated the importance of preparation, intelligence, unity, and courage in achieving victory against impossible odds. Every small victory, every clever tactic, and every act of bravery contributed to a larger picture of success. Elena's leadership, the resilience of the human network, and the determination of countless colonists had reshaped the galaxy's balance of power. The Carvens, once supreme and unchallenged, now faced a species that could think, adapt, and inspire. Humanity had proven that it was not only capable of survival, but of triumph, setting the stage for a new era in the galaxy where fear would no longer define them.